Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott MacKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
All right, welcome to Industrial Talk. Thank you very much for joining the numero uno, industrial-related podcast in the universe that celebrates you industry professionals all around the world. You are bold, brave, you dare greatly, you innovate, you collaborate, especially now. I think that there's a renaissance happening in industry, and it's exciting. It's frothy. It's staticky. It's got a lot of energy happening out there. That's why we celebrate you, because you're a part of it. I want to be more a part of it. That's what I want. That's my goal. All right, on the podcast today, we've got a gentleman by the name of Dan Joe Barry. Configit is the company, and we're talking about their technology, their solution, and how it'll make you better. That's bottom line. It'll make you better. So let's get cracking with that conversation. As I fade out. It was a great conversation. We went off on tangents, but it doesn't matter. That's what industry's all about. It's all about the people. It's a people conversation. Yeah, the technology is the technology, but man, it's the people that solve these incredible challenges. Again, renaissance, an industrial renaissance. It's not a revolution, it's a renaissance, because it's always been here. That's my take. You know, put it in the bank, whatever you want to do with it. That's what I'm all about. Okay, a couple of business points before we get cracking with that conversation. One, I'm coming out with an ebook. Be on the lookout. I'm finalizing it. I'm just doing my little bit of edits here and there, and it's a book, an ebook. I don't want a book. I mean, with a hardbound. I've written the book in such a way that I would probably read the book, and that would be very to the point, solutions, identify the challenges, things like that, and just cut with the fluff. I don't want the fluff. So the book doesn't have any fluff. It just has a summary to a certain extent, a high-level summary of the conversations that I've had with many industry leaders and some of the pain points, the strategies around the pain points, and then, of course, the technologies, the solutions to be able to sort of leverage and be able to resolve these pain points going forward, make a business that is resilient and successful. That's what we want. We want you to be successful. Okay, we want you to be there. So anyway, be on the lookout. It'll be out on my website. It'll be also, if you're on the newsletter, you'll get a link. You know, read it. Find out what individuals did, these leaders, these industrial leaders are doing to address and solve the problems. There, I like that. Another point of business. Boston Med Device is a conference. The conference is September 30th through October 1st. It's in Boston, right? It's Boston. It's anyway, if you're in the medical industry, if you're in manufacturing, if you're in anything that is dealing with this, this is a must attend. I'll be there. That'll be great. Anyway, that's the Boston. It says ME device. It's medical device. So if you're in the medical device, there you go. Boston ME device. And it's brought to you by those wonderful people at MD&M. Yeah, they do a heck of a show. In Forma, they deliver the goods with their conferences. Been to one. Broadcast. No, I've been to a couple of them. Broadcast from them. Yeah, they're exceptional. You get a lot from these events. So put that on your calendar. September 30th to October 1st is the dates of that event. I'll have all of the backlinks associated with that out on Industrial Talk. So make it a point if you're in that business. Got plenty of time. Make it happen. They do a great job. All right, on to the conversation. Configit is the company. Dan Joe, and he wants to go by Dan Joe. It's not Dan. It's not just Joe. It's Dan Joe. So make a point that you're, when you reach out to him on LinkedIn, that you just refer to him as Danjo, and he'll say, thank you very much, because he's that nice of a guy. He's that nice of a guy. Anyway, Danjo's in the hot seat. We're going to be talking about the solution, Configit solution. It's spectacular. There you go. It's really a very advanced, value-added solution that if you're in the world of manufacturing, industry, let's just keep it at industry, you need to look into this particular solution without a doubt. All right, here's Danjo. Danjo, welcome to Industrial Talk. Thank you very much for finding time in your busy schedule to just share your insights with the best audience in the world, Industrial Talk. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and thanks very much for the opportunity to talk to your audience.
It took a little while to sort of triangulate schedules. I kept on...
Yeah. When you're in demand, things change quickly.
You are in demand. Far more than I am, let's put it that way. Those days are, I don't know. It is what it is. So Danjo, Denmark, calling all the way from Denmark, which is great,
right.
by the way.
Copenhagen, yes.
Copenhagen. And we're going to be talking a little bit about their company, Configit, and the solutions that are being provided by that company. Dan's going to expand a little bit. Danjo, sorry.
That doesn't matter. Danjo.
No, Danjo. I'm going to get it right. Anyway, before we get into that conversation, Danjo, please give us a little background on where you come from, a little about who you are.
Yeah, I think if anyone's being observant, they'll know I'm not speaking with a Danish accent.
I know, and that's why I was.
I'm a little bit more western here. I grew up in Ireland, so I moved to Denmark a long time ago, 91 actually. So yeah, I met a beautiful Danish woman, and I'm with her ever since. So that's one of the successes of my life, I would say. Quite rare these days. So got a nice family, 2 daughters that are now in their 20s. So, it's the new chapters of life are opening up at this point.
I'm a new grandparent. How's that?
Oh, well done. There you go.
Well, when you become a granddad, shoot.
Yeah. Well, in some ways you're looking forward to it, and others like, you can take your time, girls. It's fine.
Yeah, I just shifted gears real quick when you said that. I said, grandparent. Yeah.
But it's great because you get to play with them and then give them back when they get difficult.
Good time. I've already played that game. Anyway, sorry, I digress. I know.
Yeah. So anyway, so I'm got a great life here. Denmark is a great country. If anyone's wondering, yes, we have high taxes, but it's a great life that you can have here. Great if you have a family.
How do you deal with Guinness? Is Guinness good?
Oh, I drink it.
Yeah. Is it as delicious as it is in Ireland? As it is?
I'll tell you what. There's a bar here. I'll give him a plug. It's Kennedy's Bar. My friend Tony Kennedy's Bar here in Copenhagen. That's as good a Guinness you get anywhere.
Oh, that's great.
So Guinness in the 90s, Guinness actually made a big effort to make sure that every bar around the world that was selling Guinness, understood how to do it properly. And thankfully they have paid attention. So it is good to get a Guinness in Copenhagen at very least, so yeah.
I had a terminal in Dublin, and I would always get the Guinness, and I thought, this is next level. I can't get it in the United States.
You can?
You can, but it's not the same. It's just.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah.
It's just like there is a noticeable difference when I'm there, and I was like, yeah.
I'll tell you an anecdote. This has got nothing to do with manufacturing, but I'll tell you a little anecdote about Carlsberg, which is a Danish brewery, obviously. And anyone who's lived in England or Ireland knows that the Carlsberg there does not taste the same as Carlsberg here in Denmark. It just tastes better here. And I knew a guy from England who was working here for a short time, and I asked him, it's like, why can't you take the recipe back and do it properly? And his response was, 70% of the taste is the water. Right. And so where you brew it makes a difference. The water actually makes a difference. So that might be the explanation. you know.
There you have it. I'll run with it. Yeah, I'll run.
Well, you know what? If you want to talk about supply chain shocks, that's something that manufacturing people talk about. We had a little crisis of not being able to get Guinness over here. There's this whole campaign that went on with splitting the G. I don't know if you've heard about that.
No.
But that became a kind of a TikTok thing in the UK at least, which brought a lot of women into drinking Guinness. So the demand for it went up there. But then Guinness took off in China. And then suddenly places like Copenhagen got deprioritized. And I think it was like a couple of months we couldn't get Guinness here. And that was disastrous. So, that was supply chain shock, I'll tell you.
I didn't think about it, but yeah, you're absolutely right. That'll take the inventory out of the market real fast. Wow.
But it's a luxury problem for them. And I mean, the regular supply is reestablished, so they must have figured out how to do it. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Are we going to talk about Configit? I hope so.
If we eventually get around to it.
Speaking of that, give us a little roadmap on what Configit is. What was the brainchild behind that company?
Yeah, it's a company that's been around for 25 years, actually, and been focused on the same problem from the beginning. You see, one of the things we don't often think about when it comes to products or manufacturing is the fact that in many cases, people don't buy a product anymore. They're buying a configuration of a product.
Yeah.
It's either a product variant or it's something customized that they're looking for, but increasingly something that they configure, right? So if you think about it this way, if you're buying a car now, it's very, you're quite used to going into a car configurator where you go in and say, I want these wheels, I want that color, I want this upholstery. I think we're all as consumers getting very used to having that possibility to kind of say, yeah, I want to make the car my way or whatever it is that you're buying. And that's not just a business to consumer thing, it's a business to business thing too, right? So you're seeing more of these, what's called configure to order type of business models, where we'll give a bunch of choices to the customer and let them choose what they want and we'll put it together, right? So that's been around for quite a while, and there's a lot of companies, and we might get into this in a moment. A lot of companies like to go in that direction because it's got a lot of advantages. So the Configit guys, which all came out of the IT university here in Copenhagen, there's 2 professors that started it along with a few bright students. They kind of saw this early that when you need to support configuring complex products like an automobile, a car, or like let's just say a pump or a valve or there's all sorts of things that are very, very complex, right? When there's lots and lots of options, it gets very, very complicated very, very quickly. And even to this day, many people are trying to manage this with Excel sheets. But anyone who works with Excel knows that you run out of rows it's a lot of rows, but you still run out of rows quickly. And what you got to think about is for every option that you're adding that people can choose, it's the number of potential configurations, the number of potential combinations of those options starts to go up asymptotically. You go from it's a squared problem, right? So let me give an example. We probably get back to so you could have maybe 100,000 features in an automobile or one of these products.
Yeah.
But that 100,000 features would be options as well, right? Here's where I can choose something, right? Like 100,000 places where you can choose something. That will quickly turn into let's take an example. There's Jaguar Land Rover, that one. We worked out at one point that would require 5.8 by 10 to the 21 valid configurations. So that's 5.8 by 10 to the 21 ways you could configure a Jaguar Land Rover and it would be valid, right? Now try to imagine managing that in an Excel sheet.
Yeah, you can't.
It's impossible, right?
No.
But it also kind of gets you thinking about it, right? Because these are all things you want to offer. Like there's technical options that you're doing in the engineering phase. There's commercial options that you're doing in the sales and marketing phase. There's manufacturing options about which factory and which vendor and which source am I using. And then there's servicing options that you have on top of that. So throughout the entire cycle, you're making choices and you're offering choices, and people are making those sorts and configuring things together. And then it's the culmination of all these choices that turns out to be what the person is buying, getting delivered, and getting serviced. And that's the complexity challenge that you have. So, and for the most part, we in the manufacturing space, we kind of don't acknowledge this issue, right? We kind of try to manage this in engineering. You know, we'll try to define some variants that we'll cover, and if we get a new option coming in, we'll try to make a new variant and clone and own. You know, take something we've already done and change it. So that's one way of dealing with customization, but that quickly becomes a complexity problem as well, because suddenly then you've got
it collapses on itself. It's sort of the weight of that, and the market, me, you, others, demand that bespoke type of mindset. Yeah. I do. Anyway, I'm sorry. I was just...
Yeah, but I mean, you're right. I mean, you've just kind of given me a segue into the other option of doing things, which is just to do customization and say, I'll do it to spec. You know, so if you've got a cruise liner and you're buying an engine, you want an engine that'll fit the exact cruise liner you're designing, right? And no two are going to be the same. So, you know, if you're Man Energy Solutions or whatever, or, you know, you're making these engines, then basically you're just going to wait for the spec and say, right, I'll make what you asked for. But then you're not reusing what you've already done. You might have made something very similar, but it's like, no, I'm going to start from scratch because they're going to make it specially for this customer, right? And it's going to take engineers and time and resources, and you're going to go back and forth, and, you know, it's
cost.
Yeah. So that's an expensive way of doing it.
Yeah.
So the idea with configure to order is you kind of try and find the best middle ground between these options, right? In the sense of let's build a bunch of reusable components that we can assemble and that people can choose then, right? So we'll give them options, but we're controlling what options they can have and what they can choose. So maybe you're not addressing 100% of everybody's customized needs, but you might be addressing 80% of it, right? So it's like this is one way to approach it. In reality, it's very few products or manufacturers that can go 100% configure to order. They would still like to have a little bit of engineering or something like that. So you just have to be able to accommodate that. And you know, a lot of our customers are kind of in that hybrid space where it's like, yeah, we've got some configure to order that makes things more efficient and costly, cost effective. But then we want to have the ability to kind of customize it for that customer when they need it, right? I just had a comment from one of our customers there who said, you know, if we just have 30%, right, that would be good enough. 30% CTO would be fine. Like that would actually have a big impact, right? So, I mean, sometimes people talk about this configure to order thing and they start to think about, oh, it's going to be so complicated. I got to figure out all the potential options of what people would want and what have you. But it's not as complicated as you would think. And you can combine this with approaches like product line engineering, where you can do some sort of configuration in the engineering part to figure out what kind of modules am I going to have and going to offer and stuff like that. But actually, it's not more straightforward than you could think.
But Danjo, I have let's say I'm a manufacturer. I have a technology stack. I have my ERP. I have my CRM. I have my engineering platform. I have all of this technology. And is it safe to say, and that the Configit model allows me to pull in the relevant information from this technology stack and put it into a comprehensive view so that I'm pulling in all the relevant information? Is that?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, I mean, So we coined a phrase or an approach called configuration lifecycle management about 10 years ago. And the basic idea behind that is we recognize the fact that you're going to be defining options and rules in every one of these systems. So there'll be some in the PLM, there'll be some in ERP, there'll be some in your CRM, maybe even your CPQ will have some pricing information. So there's all these different systems where you're doing it. And it's because the process is somewhat siloed in a way, right? You've got the engineers doing their thing and everyone else, and like you don't want to mess with that too much, right? They're kind of, that's finely tuned, but that information is there, but it's been created in a silo, so it's not exactly aligned, right? So what happens today is you have this issue where you're tossing this stuff over the wall, and then you're highly dependent on some experienced guy or lady who's going to kind of pull this together somehow. They're going to say, oh, I know what he means by that, and that means this in our world, and actually this won't work, I'll go back and talk to them. But that's someone who's got a lot of experience and knowledge, can interpret what comes over the wall, and we don't realize how much manufacturing organizations are reliant on these little silent heroes, because the thing is, when things work, nobody asks why. It's only when that person's no longer there and things fall apart, then it's like, what happened? Everything was great last week. What happened?
They ride in on a white horse.
Yeah, well, they retired. That was it, right?
Yeah. Heroes.
So what we're talking about here with this approach is to say, look, it's all about product configurations now, right? So you got to manage what you're exactly delivering and selling to that customer, right? Because they didn't buy your product, they bought a configuration of it, right? So you got to manage that, right? So what we do is we're able to import all that information, all those rules and options from the different systems, bring them together in a product model. This is a model-based approach. It's a product model where we can have more nuanced context, and we can build upon those rules. We can create system-level rules on top of those. We can add more information and properties and other things, so it's a bit richer, the kind of information that we can put into that. But we're gathering it together, and at the very heart of our approach is this idea of with a technology we use called virtual tabulation, which I talked before about the fact that a lot of people using Excel arcs or Excel sheets for these configurations, right? Virtual tabulation, you can think about it as being a gigantic one of these. So we basically go through and say, okay, here's your model, here's all your options or features as we call them, and here are all the rules about when you can use it and when you can't. So we'll go through that and pretty much calculate that. We'll compile it and say, right, we'll compile all of the valid configurations, like 5.8 by 10 to the 21. We'll calculate all those right up front, and we'll save that in a file which is about 3 megabytes large, right? And that's a lookup file now. It's like a Excel sheet, just enormous. And basically, if you want to validate and say, is this configuration valid? Will this work? You just have to do a quick lookup in this file. And if it's there, it is. If it isn't, it isn't. And it can be partial or whatever. But if it says it's in there, you're good to go, right? But the advantage of that is you have a full overview then of what you're offering. You know exactly what you're offering. You know how it's connected to other things. So when people are going through that sales configuration process now, we can guarantee there'll be no errors, because we're only offering stuff that you can deliver, that you can sell, that is engineering, the engineering intent is there. So we've checked it against all the rules from all the different places. And basically, then that whatever the customer is going to choose is something that you can manufacture and deliver and service, right? So that's the idea. And because it's just a quick lookup file, it's super quick, and you can give a guided experience with it. So if I'm using the configurator, I might choose some things that as I'm choosing stuff, it's not doing any calculations at this point. It might just check, are we still good to go? Are we still good to go? Is this in there? Is this combination in there? Every time I make an option, is it still in there? It's just a quick lookup. It's like, yeah, you're still good to go. But if you pick something then that just breaks a rule somewhere, it's like, no, that's not going to work. We can go back in the file and say, okay, this is actually a number of conflicts you have here. Maybe there's 3 or 4 things that don't fit here, but that's no problem, right? if you just change these things, 1, 2, 3, then you're back to where you need to be. And this is all interactive. So alternative ways of doing this, there's alternative technologies out there. I mean, you could be waiting 2 minutes. You could be waiting, the worst I've seen is 10 minutes for every time you make a selection before it kind of figures out, okay, this is what you can do now, because they're trying to calculate this stuff in real time, pruning away what's possible on this. So it's quite unique.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, maybe I went down a rabbit hole there. Did I?
No. All I can think of is data.
Yeah.
Two things, Danjo. One, we're gonna talk about implementation of the solution, like everybody's saying 18 months, whatever the amount. But more importantly, do you go back in history to try to create these rules based off of historical data and historical solutions, so that you start to build that history, that those rules? What do you do with the historical components? Like I'm Greenfield. I'm a manufacturer. I like what Configit does. Let's get going.
Well, I mean, the Greenfield's easy, right? Because then you just you start building your models in the modeling environment, and off you go, right? The existing environments is an interesting one, right? Because it's not so much the history as such, but it's more the case of there will be product models and rules and stuff that are already well defined.
Yes.
Like SAP is a good example. SAP is very model driven. So there'll be a lot of models and pricing models and cost models, all these things in SAP. And we're particularly good at extracting that information. We've worked with SAP for many, many years, so we know how to do that. So we're focused on getting the latest information out, right? So all of the options and rules that are valid in their system, like, are still alive for products that might have been delivered 50 years ago or whatever. We'll bring it all in, right? And of course, it's our customers who will be doing the work, in a sense, right? Because they're the ones who are trying to figure out what's relevant and what's not relevant, right? So we're giving them the tools. We've got the modeling environment. We're giving them the import tools, the integrations that they would need in order to do this. But that's about establishing that product model, which would have as much relevant options and rules as is necessary in there to cover existing and maybe even previous products.
In a world of manufacturing, there's a lot of costs, a lot of dynamic pricing that exists with, let's just say, feedstock. I use this type of plastic, I use this type of metal, whatever, and it's dynamic. But that's where these legacy systems do a good job at saying, hey, I'm procured, whatever this channel, whatever it might be, but be able to feed that price point into your model, right?
Sure. So I mean, from an implementation point of view, we'd often suggest just getting started with an import, right? So you could just import the information in.
Yeah.
But what you can do is start to build these integrations where you can synchronize. So going further down the road, you're doing synchronization where there's a two-way update.
Yeah.
So when something changes here, it changes here as well. So we have a whole consulting arm of people who actually go in and do these projects and help customers. And we also have a bunch of partners that help us with these implementations as well. So we've got it's a SaaS-based solution with open web API. So we've definitely, the technology-wise, we've made it as open as possible to do this. But as well as I do that integrations aren't plug and play, right? So there's a lot of work involved there.
But I just want to take my ERP, Danjo, and I just take it off the shelf. I don't want any customization because customization makes it more expensive.
Well, ERP is a good one because there's nothing but customization in that, really. But that's what they make their money on. But
that's true. That's true. But
because everybody's process is different, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the manufacturing world, in a sense that there are no two manufacturing operations which are the same. They're all going to be a little bit different, right? So there's no one solution that will fit. You always have to adapt it somehow.
Yeah.
But I mean, when it comes to integration, there is this idea, and you often market it wise. And I'm a VP of product marketing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to hit marketing people with this, but you try to put your best foot forward. You talk about like plug and play, and we've got these connectors and all this sort of thing. But really, unless you've got an industry standard for the data model that's behind the API, so you have to have this data field in this format and it means this on both sides, it's never going to be plug and play, because the first thing you got to do is you got to go look and see what's the data models on either side of this API and match them up. And most of the time, to be quite honest, the data foundation in manufacturing is not great, right? I mean, because each silo has kind of done its own thing, and maybe they've been disciplined with their data, maybe not. Maybe they're using a field and it should be for this, but they're using it for something else, and they're not using the one they should be using. And, and then you have to get the expert in again to say, why is it like this? And it's like, back in 1977, we had this thing. And, it's like, so this is the reality of what we're dealing with here. So, I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody that like these kind of implementations are, a few weeks we're done, right? We try to approach it in this way of saying, right, let's import the stuff. That's simple. That's quick. Let's get going quickly. Let's get a product model up and running. Let's get some value out of it. And let's keep working with it and iteratively add more value, right?
Does it, I hate to say this, but I will. AI, does it continue? Does it learn? Does it become a sentient being after a while or whatever? But I would imagine that if I'm the consumer and I have this conversation with the manufacturer, and that manufacturer is using the Configit solution, and I have a greater confidence that what we talk about will be delivered as per the specifications I lay out. There's a good quality level there.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you brought it up, because everyone talks about Gen AI right now, and we are as well. So I can tell you a little bit about that in a moment. But the funny thing is, this technology was originally worked on 25 years ago, right? Yeah. At that time, AI was not a buzzword. If you wanted to get funding for a project and said AI, you could forget about it, right? That's like, that was science fiction stuff. So actually, the virtual tabulation technology I was talking about is a type of AI. It's a neurosymbolic AI. So it's a rule-based AI engine, which, as opposed to Gen AI, it's actually designed to be predictable. It's designed to give you an accurate answer every time, right? So that's what you're alluding to. Like, when we're ensuring that you'll only be offered valid stuff, there is nothing that you cannot have invalid things in there, right? Yeah. If you design your model right, if you made your options and rules correctly, and during the compilation process, we'll catch any inconsistencies or gaps or where things don't make sense. It just won't compile. We'll say, hey, there's something up with this. These things don't match, right? So that's one of the values we have. You can actually validate a lot of stuff, and you can see misalignments between data from different systems already under that compilation phase. So before it gets anywhere near a customer, you're catching errors, right? And so that's one of the interesting things about this technology. So we just called it virtual tabulation at the time because it would never have flown calling it something AI.
Yeah.
Right?
See.
Now the world has turned. The world has turned now, right? So now Gen AI is like really hot. Yeah. And Gen AI is wonderful. I mean, I think we all use it, and we can see a lot of stuff in it. But I think we all realize now, everyone who has used it, that Gen AI is different. It's a probabilistic engine, right? It's working off tokens and numbers. It doesn't really understand what it's saying, right? So which it makes it even more wonderful that it actually works. Most of the time, it looks like it knows what it's doing. But that's also where you can fall into the trap. It can tell you something that's wrong with the same confidence as something that's right, So this idea of hallucinatory Gen AI is a thing. Now, as time goes on, that will get less and less and less, because there's lots of research papers out here about combining that Gen AI with other AI, which would compensate for it. And one of the solutions is actually to combine Gen AI with neurosymbolic AI, the same AI we use, because then you have the creativeness and the spontaneity of that Gen AI,
Yeah.
and the flexibility too, to be honest. But then you have the rule-based stuff beneath it that goes, yeah, I know you came up with that solution, but nah, you can't do that, right? That breaks all the rules. So sorry, go back, right? So what we're using it for right now is in something we call our ACE Copilot. Is it's helping people to build product models quickly. So basically, you can give it a text prompt, you can give it an image, you can give it a brochure, and it will create a product model based on that. So we have a few different demos on our website, and we've done a few tech talks and webinars on this. But it's really cool. And we were doing last year, we were going around to shows showing how you could get from an idea to a configurator in 10 minutes by using this approach. It's amazing. It's amazing. So we're working away on that, and we know we've got some more enhancements in that coming out in a few weeks' time, or actually, 2 or 3 weeks' time, actually. But that's kind of amazing to me because you're really helping like our customers, our modelers, like or even people who wouldn't normally make a model. They can come in now and suggest edits and stuff like that. They can take an existing model and say, like if you're a product manager or something like that, you say, I'd really like it if we could also offer, Topaz, right? So you just go and say, can you please add Topaz to the product model, right? And it'll do it, right? So it's as simple as that. So I think we're kind of touching ground here on new ways of interfacing with technology, and maybe this idea of point and click and on GUIs and stuff like that. That's probably not where we're going to be going in the future. It's going to be much more.
Not at all.
Yeah. So that's kind of exciting.
That's exciting times. I wish I was younger. I wouldn't know where to go. I mean, I'm so, distracted by the shiny objects. There's a lot of shiny objects out there that capture your attention. That's for doggone sure. It's exciting.
But you remember back in the early days of the internet, I mean, back in, the turn of the century or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone was like, the internet's going to solve everything, right? They're saying the same thing about AI now. And if you remember, you had the Petco and all these other companies that just rushed into the space and made huge investments, and they talked about disestablishment or the disintermediation. Sorry, and all the things they predicted around that time actually came to pass, but just didn't happen maybe as quickly as they thought it would.
The timing, all timing.
Yeah. We're probably going to see that kind of shakeout here as well. But if you went back, you'd still kind of go all in on internet, right? You'd be like, I mean, it's not an option. I think we're in the same space with AI, Gen AI, all these things. It's like, we're going to figure this stuff out. You just don't want to get left behind on it, right?
Yeah. See, and I'm bullish on data. Now, all of a sudden, I can collect data. I can collect mass quantities of data. I don't have, me personally, Scott, I don't have the bandwidth to be able to analyze all this tsunami of data, but I have a tool to be able to do it, which then gives me and unearths and flips over insights and tactical directions and all. It's exciting.
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah, no question of it. Yeah, so so I think it's we've all got to explore this and see what limits of what it can do and where it can help. And so far we're kind of happy with what we're doing. I think it's going to be very, very good for our customers.
Yeah, Joe, we have to wrap this conversation up. It's
wow, already? Oh my God! We got so much to cover.
I know. There's just we've got to plan for another one. Just because I think that you guys are really leading the way in this. I remember when we first started talking offline, I was talking about the challenges I had when I was with Price Waterhouse and taking systems and trying to have these systems talk with each other, because everybody recognized the necessity to have that, but the ability to be able to do it was not very. It was very cumbersome and very yucky, and apparently that still exists today.
Well, the actual integration part still takes work, but I think it's the kind of the approach, the idea to say, look, let's just focus on a particular thing like configurable options, right? that we're focused on. It's not everything. It's just like, look, we're going to do that. There's some problems that have to be solved cross-functionally. And say, right, we'll take this piece and we'll look after that, and we'll manage the life cycle of that. And so we'll take that, and you can continue to do what you do in the silos in your existing systems, and you can still master the data there and all this sort of thing. But this is helping with a specific problem. Yeah. How do I make sure that this stuff is all aligned and correct, and
I love it.
It's not going to come back and bite me later. This is what we're doing.
I like it. It. That's a heck of a solution. Well done, guys. I like it. Dan, Joe, how do people get a hold of you? Let's say I want to go out to LinkedIn because that's where I want to get a hold of you. Well,
we're on LinkedIn. Configit's got a profile there. I'm on LinkedIn as well. You'll find me under Daniel Joseph Barry. I don't think there's many of us out there. And then our website, obviously, www.configit.com. You can definitely, and then, I'd encourage people to go there. This is a different approach, so it's not going to be immediately obvious to people what this is. So go to our website, have a look around, figure it out there. There's a lot of information you can get.
Draw a picture. That's what I would do. I would draw a picture. Little boxes and lines and data.
Oh, believe me, there's plenty of boxes and lines pictures.
Flow diagram. Yeah, I would in a jet second. You were absolutely wonderful, Danjo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
All right, listeners, we're going to have all the contact information for Danjo out on Industrial Talk. So please reach out to this guy. Find out more. Configit is the company. Fantastic solution. Love it. All right, we're going to wrap it up on the other side. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
Danjo Barry. Configit is the company. How about that? See, I told you. When you listen to that, you're saying, oh, that's a robust solution. That's what you said. You said it in your heart. Robust solution. Anyway, it is. And it adds value. So check it out. Everything is out on Industrial Talk. Backlink to Danjo. I was getting ready to call by front. I was going to make the cardinal mistake. Danjo, as well as Configit. It's all out there on Industrial Talk. All right. Again, look out for that ebook. That ebook that solves problems, that solves the challenges, that I've been listening to for the past 7 years of individuals that have these great insights. Share it with you. There you go. Just share it with you. All right. Be bold, be brave, dare greatly. Hang out with Danjo. You will change the world. We're going to have another great conversation shortly, so stay tuned.